Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Ichabod, Ichabod, Ichabod and Mr. Toad.
Welcome once again to the Medfield College Film Society's third annual Spooky Halloween special. You hepcats, everybody gonna get all spooky out there. Old Jack, Mr. Jack-o'-lantern. Yes, we're here again at the Medfield College. Oh, everybody, old university, old Joe College over here. We're gonna talk to everybody in the Film Society. We're gonna talk to Mr. Robert McSwain, the founder of this here vehicle. Robert, how you doing tonight?
Mr. Bing Crosby here. How are you doing tonight?
Oh, Bing Crosby. I just kind of have his airs. Yeah, we're having a good night tonight.
That time of year, gentlemen. And you know, growing up in the city of Pleasant Living, one event always reminded me fall was here and Halloween was right around the corner. And I got to experience that event over the weekend, and it was magical. And it was the Cleveland County Fair, guys.
Meet me at the water wheel.
So for all of our listeners, our hometown of Shelby, to which 3/4 of us share a common thread, we often spin yarn about this magical town on this podcast. This town has a county fair, and it's magical. I had one quote I want to read real quick online before we get going about the fairs. One quote of a fan said, "It's like Disney, but it's in Shelby."
I don't think that's accurate.
So is it safe to assume that this fan's probably not been to Disney, or you think they're like trolling the fair? What's going on here?
I don't know. Is it still billed as the largest county fair in North Carolina?
No, I think I think the other town that you guys moved to took that title from them.
That makes sense. But, quite a scene.
I want to throw that out there. I did the county fair last weekend, and it was
done the county fair. Saw the pig races. Saw the motorcycles that went.
Was there a destruction derby?
I went and saw the destruction derby, the Carolina Carnage, as they call it now.
Oh, nice. Very nice.
Did you have memories of the Car 3 demolition derby?
You know, yeah, a little bit. But I need to go back and watch Cars 3 now. And then mention it.
It's good. It's good stuff.
I was thinking more Jim Douglas and the Black Knight.
That's true. That, of course. It runs the gamut. Well, we got to talk to somebody who has a lot of Shelby experience. One Mr. Andy Brown. What do you think about the Cleveland County Fair, Andy?
Yeah, I've seen better.
Just like all the films we watch.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never been to the Cleveland County Fair. All I've heard since I've known Robert is, the Cleveland County Fair.
The Cleveland County Fair, yeah.
You ain't seen anything. You think you've been to Disney? Then you need to come to the Cleveland County Fair.
You think
to come
think
see
a
the water
churro's good? You like the churro? Well, wait do you have some, whatever they have.
Elephant ear.
Elephant ears.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some barbecue. Some Bridges barbecue.
Well,
But yeah, hello.
good. And of course, participating in this conversation is my brother. Surprisingly, not a prize winner at the county fair, but if only he would have put himself out there, I'm sure you could have had a squash or something that could have made it, or a rendering.
I was about to say, I'm more of the sort of arts and crafts building they have over there with the. I could have had some canned
stuff,
some canned like pickled baby corn or something. I don't know.
They didn't have the giant pumpkin this year. I was really disappointed there wasn't a ginormous pumpkin.
Well, that's
ridiculous.
That
seems beyond.
This is just another thing to complain about.
I blame climate change.
It's climate change. That's right.
I would have had a rendering, I think.
Yeah, maybe
of some sort.
Epcot, perhaps.
I can't kick it again.
I tell you, the first real art I remember making was actually of the Cleveland County Fair. I drew like an overview of the Cleveland County Fair, and I was really proud of it. I kept it for years. Had the rainbow in it, all the good stuff.
Oh, the rainbow, yeah.
They don't have the rainbow anymore.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah.
Those tropical girls were just too rooty tooty for Cleveland County.
3 caballeros for them. Yeah. Well, we should get to what we're talking about tonight. It is Halloween is approaching. It is a Halloween special. We are Halloweening. How do we Halloween this year, Michael?
Well, we're going to be watching the 1949 Disney classic, The Adventures of Ichabod, Old Icky, and Mr. Toad.
Oh, one of those British stories, huh?
One of those from across the pond.
They should have got David Bowie to do the Mr. Toad part. And
they should dub it for. Yeah. No, they can't do it anymore.
And then, yeah.
Mr. Toad.
Just sing it all.
He had a mania.
Do it now.
Ba-da-ba, ba-da-ba.
Merrily, merrily, merrily. Oh.
On our way to nowhere in particular.
That's pretty good, Bowie.
This was directed by Clyde Geronimi, Jack Kinney, and James Algar, which surprised me to see James Algar pop up in there. Features the voice of Basil Rathbone and Bing Crosby as indicated, and the great character actor Eric Blore as J. Thaddeus Toad, which I had forgotten about. This is the 11th Disney animated film. The 11th film out of the canon. It is the last of the 1940s era package films. It has 2 segments, unlike some of the others that had a bunch. This one just has 2 big segments. One based on Kenneth Graham's The Wind in the Willows, and the second based on The Legend of Sleepy Hollow by Washington Irving. And this was a project that was long in the making. Some of Walt's artists had talked him into buying the rights after they finished Snow White in the 1930s. They thought it would be a good thing to make, and Walt wasn't so sure, but they started work on it, and things wound up getting delayed by the war effort, and throughout the 1940s just kept getting delayed and delayed and delayed. And finally, the 2 stories were merged together to make a package feature. They figured they didn't quite hold up as films of their own, so they just kind of stitched them together. It was originally going to be called like 2 Fantastic Characters or something like that, which is kind of bizarre. It really rolls off the tongue.
Yeah.
But yeah,
it's interesting how many films come from that first, wave of success after Snow White of like, what are we going to do now? They went on for decades doing ideas from those, but
yeah, I mean, he went on because he got so much money. He had money for the first time and wound up just buying the rights to a ton of stuff. And at some point during the 40s, when they were really on the ropes because, overseas distribution didn't exist. So like Bambi and, all those films, Fantasia, wound up being flops because they lost so much distribution. They really got the screws turned on them finance-wise and had to shut down production on a bunch of films. But they were working on, like, Peter Pan, Lady and the Tramp, all that stuff really early on.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Andy, did you ever seen this fine film?
I had, yes.
Whoa.
Wow.
Wait,
I definitely, I think I mentioned this in the last episode, but I remember watching the Sleepy Hollow portion in elementary school. They would pull out the film reel, and lower the screen from the ceiling in the auditorium. And it's one of those things they would show in school, and I think I loved it then, and I still love that section of that movie.
Okay.
I wasn't as familiar with the Wind in the Willows part, but I'd seen it a few times since I had kids, and it's fun, it's enjoyable. But I did have a question: Is this the movie that the Mr. Toad Wild Ride was based on, or was it something else?
Yeah, that was this.
Okay.
Although the movie does not end with him getting killed and going to hell like the ride did.
A lot of liberties of the ride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember if I made this comment last episode. It's been so long since we recorded. But the movie Gone with the Wind came on when I was like 4 on broadcast television. And I got it confused with Wind in the Willows and the cartoon.
Nice.
and my parents were like, "Hey, Gone with the Wind's coming on. We should watch this." Oh, I've seen that. And they're like, "When have you seen it?" "Oh yeah, I know all about it. Yeah, it was great. It was, it was a real hoot." Like, and then I watched like the first 5 minutes. Like, this isn't. I don't think this is what I remember, and I bailed. But that's one of my memories of.
I've got motormania, Scarlet.
You missed out, man. You missed out on some good stuff. It's probably around the same time I was like becoming obsessed with Gone with the Wind. Probably from the start, from the plates from the Franklin collection or whatever they were called. Scarlet and her suitors.
Scarlet and her suitors. Only from the Franklin Mint. Yeah.
Franklin Mint. That's yeah. Anyway, let's go from one wealthy party to another. Visit Toad Hall, fittingly, with someone who tried to save Toad Hall in Florida, Mr. Michael Crawford. Take us there.
That's true. That's true.
Tally ho! Tally ho! Are we on our way to Nottingham, to Brittingham, to Buckingham, or any hammy hamlet by the sea? No! Are we on our way to Devonshire, to Lancashire, or Worcestershire? I'm not so sure. We'll have to wait and see. Oh! Are we on our way to Dover, or going merrily over the jolly old road that goes to Plymouth? Oh no! We're merrily, 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 merrily on our way to nowhere in particular. We're merrily, 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 merrily on our way, though the roads are perpendicular.
Well, we begin, it's a shock. Before Buena Vista Pictures even existed.
Well,
yeah, back when things were distributed by RKO Radio Pictures. So it's a twist beginning. You expect that Buena Vista fanfare, but no.
Yeah.
We get a very jaunty song under the opening credits, but it's a little unimaginative since it's basically a chorus singing the name of the film over and over again.
Nice.
Which I thought was funny. Ichabod, Mr. Toad. Yeah, just singing that name over and over again. The credits themselves are kind of plain, which also kind of surprised me, but they feature an endless list of legends. Too many to name here. I mean, pretty much every name is somebody who went on to be famous for animation or theme parks or even live action film. So a lot of big names there.
I know it's we always say this on the other podcast when it's like you think about, and we've said it here too, before Imagineering and before live action, all these people were together in animation, and so when you look at it, it's just like, oh my gosh! Like even when you name the directors, it's like they went on to do very different things.
In the very company. Different things,
and it's just crazy to think of them together on something that seems. If I may say, fairly inconsequential in the grand scheme of things. I mean, obviously, Ichabod is iconic, but, this isn't swinging for the fences. This isn't Bambi or something.
No, definitely not. And, I mean, when you consider what was coming up next, Cinderella, something that is more remembered and seen than this, it is weird to see just all these heavy hitters, but that's who they had on staff. We open on a stained glass.
Can I just say one more thing?
Yeah.
Claude Coates, Don DeGratti, John Hinch, and Mary Blair on styling and color alone.
Yes.
I mean, that is just true heavy hitters right there.
Yeah, pretty crazy. Yeah.
Well, and the Mary Blair really, I mean, this is a point in Disney where Mary Blair stuff really starts shining through. There's a lot of her in this movie.
Yes.
Which we'll see going forward. A lot of it. But yeah, it's pretty wild. The film opens on a stained glass window of an open book sitting by a candle. So we've got a very literary setting here.
It's cool, little whatever. I mean, I guess it's like
they love these setups, don't they? Going into the live action, pushing into the cartoon.
Yeah.
They love the libraries too. It's always going to be a library.
I kept expecting Jiminy Cricket to do a B&E and to show up since that's his jam. Yeah, it starts off with a live action set of a library, which they love to do in this era. And I don't know, there's something about the way they shoot it. And later there's some like little sort of stop motion of the books coming out of the shelves and everything. It's kind of a weird vibe. It's almost like they're shooting miniatures or something. They're not, but
you think there was like one person who was like the book opening person at Disney? They're like, hold on, let's call him up, and we need a book to open today. It's like, well, there's several ways you can do it. A good book opening is not an easy thing to put together in one day.
Do you want this done right, or do you want it done fast?
I mean, there's a lot of books that open on Disney movies.
Yeah. Big storybooks. And then they've got all sorts of books in this library. The voice of Basil Rathbone kicks in, asks us to choose the most fabulous character in English literature. And he name checks Robin Hood and King Arthur and Sherlock Holmes and Oliver Twist. He goes through, they've got a lot of books in this library. And I kept thinking, I was like, is this Walt shopping for ideas? It's like, we'll do that one and that one and that one. It was funny to see like which one of the books they shout out actually wound up being animated later.
Mm-hmm.
But Basil says he would pick J. Thaddeus Toad as the most fabulous character of all. Which is a twist. We get a little intro to Toad through a series of sketches. The book comes out and it's full of like little watercolor sketches showing Toad in a series of wild adventures, big game hunting and mountain climbing and doing all sorts of things. Apparently Toad has a mania for fads and he never cared about the cost. So we go into real animation now. Are introduced to Toad's 3 true friends, because apparently Toad was a friend to all, but everybody was trying to get some from him because he was so rich. But he had 3 true friends who were always looking out for him, and that's McBadger, Ratty, and Mole. And Rathbone continues to narrate. We see Mole arriving late for tea with Ratty in their little riverside house. Looks very cozy. Just as they're getting comfortable, the mailman shows up with a letter, a human mailman, which I thought was fascinating. Like, hello, sir, here's your mail. And they get a summons from McBadger for them to urgently come to Toad Hall, because there's problems at Toad Hall. So we find ourselves at the ancestral home of J. Thaddeus Toad, which is a pretty swanky mansion.
Totally. And I was also going to say that the designs of all these characters are so memorable. I mean, they're just so well done. And same can be said for Toad Hall. It's just all like a vibe. A vibe.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
I don't remember the Wind in the Willows book. Was there illustrations in it?
I don't know. I feel like in some probably.
Yeah. Also, the book illustrations at the beginning. Very cool. Yeah, very neat.
Yeah. But I'm just curious. I'm curious how much these animations are based off of any illustrations that were in the book.
That's a good point. They always adapted pretty. I mean, they always put their own spin on things. I mean, like Winnie the Pooh, you look at like the Pooh illustrations are way different than the Pooh characters. So they kind of do their own thing, I guess. But that would be interesting to find out. I love this mansion. He's got a great setup. And this is where I start thinking about the old ride, and which I really loved. And a lot of vibes from that in here. So that's fun. Okay.
I was just gonna say, it's crazy how the plot of the ride is wild and nonsensical, but they take so much from the design. It does. It's like, man, there's a lot there that was from the ride. And being kids, we didn't really watch this, so it's just like you just remember it all from the ride first, and then plug it into this later. So it's just kind of
I got a whole section on that here coming up. But
it is weird that because the ride doesn't follow the film exactly, but there's lots of elements from the film in the ride. It's like they just threw a bunch of random stuff in there, and it kind of follows it. So, like if you're riding the ride, you probably really have not much of an idea of what was going on, but when you pair it with the movie, you're like, okay, well, that makes sense now. Things are not going well at Toad Hall. Toad's spending has put him on the brink of bankruptcy. So, to save things, McBadger has volunteered to take over Toad's finances, which he is really not happy about. We find him going through Toad's books. He's filing away a bunch of bills for various damages Toad has inflicted on the community. He's been trashing fences and hen houses and who knows what else. It's making a mess. He's got creditors literally banging at the door, and McBadger is at the end of his rope. He's huffing and puffing in a Scottish fashion.
Yeah, this made me pine for the Scrooge McBadger crossover, and then I remembered that they exist together in Mickey's Christmas Carol, but they need to exist together more.
That's right.
McBadger in that?
Yeah, they're at Fezziwig's party. McBadger's there.
Right. Okay, because I have there's some shot recycling coming up here in a minute from Mickey's Christmas Carol, where they completely recycled like frame for frame. They just lifted McBadger out and plopped in McDuck. On some of these frames.
Well, finally, Rat and Mole show up, and they find McBadger. He's at the end of his rope. McBadger says something has to be done about Toad. He's gone too far. He prevails on Rat and Mole to find Toad and stop him. Apparently, Toad has a new mania. He's got a gypsy cart and a horse named Cyril, and is speeding around the countryside, terrorizing everyone. And so we cut to Toad speeding along on his gypsy cart, and he is singing Nowhere in Particular and creating havoc. And this is where I get big nostalgia for the old ride hearing this song.
Yeah, I was going to say, this takes me right to the queue
Yes.
of waiting in line. And immediately when I heard of that, I was, my mind went straight to that ride.
It would play on such an aggressive loop.
Such
that it's so burned. Yeah, a small loop.
Yeah, just like that chorus over and over again, wasn't it?
Yeah. And so it is really burned into my brain.
It
real
is
hard.
But is like a gypsy wagon a fad? Is that what they're saying at this point?
I guess so. Or it's a fad for him.
Jeff and Michael, did you ever work that ride?
No, it was closed when I went there. I was the opening poo crew.
Because I remember you opened poo. I didn't know if you were there. If there's any crossover.
It was right after it closed, and Michael closed it down.
Yeah, I was
in person the last day.
One of the last ones to ride. Wow. R.I.P. Anyway, Rat and Mole show up in the middle of the road, calls Toad to stop, and comes to a screeching halt. He invites him to come along for the ride. Toad is unbothered by anything, and like this is like the theme throughout the show is. Where some people would be like, "Oh, leave me alone." He's just happy to see everybody. He's just happy to be there, and he's like, "Yeah, come along. Let's go." And Mole starts to go before Rat intervenes, kind of gets him back in line. Mole is easily influenced, I think. Toad introduces them to Cyril, who seems to be quite a bounder. He's kind of a Cockney horse, and Rat tries to get Toad to give up his horse and cart, but Toad isn't having it. They even try and carry Toad off physically when that doesn't work. But doesn't help, and Toad goes speeding off again, only to come to a crashing stop when he hears the sound of a horn. Catches a sight of two people out on a motor car and is immediately transfixed. He goes into a hypnotic state and starts making car noises. And Rat is upset to see that Toad has a new mania, motormania.
I love the outfits that people would drive around in those old cars.
Yeah, those like big duster coats and the goggles. Yeah,
gloves.
Speaking of which, my father has an antique car, and my mom was trying to get him to dress like that once.
Oh, that's nice. I'd like to see that.
He didn't go for it.
She should dress like it and drive it. Why not her?
Yeah,
there you go.
She should go for a whole steampunk vibe and become get whirly gigs and all sorts of contraptions and things, and just turn it into
run
like
that by
Chitty
her next
Bang
time you
Bang.
talk to her.
Oh boy, Toad's got the motormania, and he's got his eyes are hypnotized. So they drag him back to Toad Hall, and try and lock him into the room till the poison has worked its way out of his system. So they put him in bed and douse him in water and lock him up. And he's a hollering, he's protesting, but Rat stands firm, and he and Mole sit there guarding the door. And in the human-sized furniture, Toad has all human-sized things.
Yeah, we're living in a human world here.
Yeah.
Oddly. Even for, yeah.
One wonders how the Toad Empire came about.
Yeah.
How they made that money. Well, that night, Toad sneaks out the window of his room. He uses the old torn sheet trick and goes off in search of a motor car. And he finds one, but is so consumed by his mania that he steals it. And we get the whirling newspapers of exposition where Toad finds himself in court. Rat and Mole are called to testify against him. This prosecutor is... badgering the witnesses, including Badger. And they all kind of get railroaded by the prosecution because he's putting words in their mouths, and they're trying to help, but the prosecutor's not having it. Toad, of course, decides to act in his own defense, and he calls Cyril the horse to his defense as a character witness to talk about how great he is. And Cyril antagonizes the prosecutor for a little bit before telling the story of how he and Toad came across a motor car driven by a gang of weasels who stopped at a roadside pub. There's weasels. It's always weasels.
Is this the first appearance of the weasels?
Yeah. Gotta be.
Okay. Also, there's a solid lawyer burn that Cyril gives him. It's like he says, and what would be the honest way? Because he's talking about how he acquired it the honest way. And the barrister's like, and what would be the honest way? And Cyril's like, well, I thought you wouldn't know that.
Yeah. Eagerly gets him.
I really want to start interrogating my children like the prosecutor does, though. Just thank you. That is all.
That is all. So you did this and you did this. Yes, thank you. These weasels pull up in a sweet ride, and Toad is so enraptured that he decides to make the weasels an offer on the car. He doesn't know that they had stolen it. You don't buy hot merchandise off of a weasel, man. What are you talking about?
Don't deal with the weasels, man. They're gonna send you down the drain.
Toad's in his PJs still. He doesn't have any cash on him, so he offers them the deed for Toad Hall in exchange for the car. Toad, not very
practical.
Yeah, that's a word.
How did Toad get his money, I wonder?
Yeah, that's the big question.
Family money.
How'd that happen?
That'd be entertainment, maybe.
Dancing girls.
Right.
Well, when he drops the bomb that he gave up the deed for Toad Hall, this makes McBadger pass out. Nobody can believe it. And the prosecutor doesn't believe it either. Says, why would you trade an estate worth £100,000 in exchange for a car? Which, agreed, not a good deal. And Toad calls his witness, Winky, the barman, who saw him sign the deal. Winky is an obviously shady character from jump. But Toad is an idiot. And, he says, well, he's a businessman of impeccable moral character. And, just talking about how he's a good, solid citizen of the community and all this. We can tell that is clearly not the case. And Toad is kind of like walking him through retelling the story. And as he's doing it, Toad's like getting dressed to leave. He's like putting on his little gloves, getting his little monocle out. He's getting dressed up to leave in triumph.
I have vivid memories of Winky for some reason. I don't know if it's from the ride or from this movie. Like as soon as I saw him,
he factors in the ride pretty notably.
Prominently.
But bad news vibes from Winky from the get-go. It just feels like something.
He's stroking his mustache. He
had that bar in the ride that had that Rapunzel on the wall. The painting of the lady.
And he had it in the movie bring that up later, too, but not the same, but similar but different. He had it in the movie too.
Toad's like getting ready to walk out of the room. He's waiting for Winky to say, this is what happened. But Winky, heel turn, says Toad tried to sell him a stolen car.
Winky.
Winky, well, I was about to say not what he seems, but he is exactly what he seems, just not for Toad. This sends the court into chaos, and Toad is shipped off to prison.
I have some questions about this legal system.
Yeah.
Well, it's British legal system, you know.
Yeah, it seems, highly questionable means and methods here.
Yes, once again it was a white Christmas, and once again the melodies of Yuletide hung sweet upon the winter's air. Hearts were gay and spirits high. Indeed, in all the city there was but one spot untouched by the warmth of Christmas cheer. The Tower, grim monument to despair, cold, cruel, forbidding, and unfortunately the abode of Toad for a good many Christmases yet to come.
Well, merry, merry Christmas time. Bind everyone with happiness. It was Christmas and the hearts were gay and spirits were high. The melodies of Yuletide hung sweet upon the winter's air. That's right, poor Toad has been jailed. And I guess it's the Tower of London. Is that what that's supposed to be?
I don't know. It's some.
I thought I saw I don't know either. I saw Big Ben at some point, but that's certainly not the Tower of London. That's
something else.
Yeah, they just call it the Tower. And so
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. Yeah, but it's the one place unwarmed by Christmas cheer. And alone with his memories of his wasted life, Toad weeps for his friends, McBadger, Moley, and Rat. And Toad is now remorseful, and he's carrying around his ball and chain. You don't see a ball and chain much anymore.
No.
The London prison system's rough, man.
Yeah, really. For stealing a car, you get hard time.
Doing hard time, get a straw bed, cement floor, and ball and chain.
Yep. But there's hope, because the portly jailer tells him that since it's Christmas, he's allowed to have one visitor, and his grandma has arrived. And then here comes Grandma, her face covered, speaking in a high pitch. And then she unveils her face, and it's Toad's friend Cyril.
Cyril also has a vibe. There's also another kind of vibe.
Yeah.
Party vibe. Maybe an addiction vibe. I don't know.
Yeah. The jailer doesn't notice that it's Cyril, and Toad is very happy to see his friend, but begins to weep. Cyril tells him to pipe down because he's got a disguise for him. It's essentially another outfit that makes Toad look just like a granny. I guess it's like a white bonnet and almost like a pink nightgown kind of thing.
Yeah,
Correct.
it's like a nightgown, which I don't know why they're wearing out around. But
well, Cyril whispers the plan in Toad's ear, and Toad's sadness is quickly replaced by this mania to escape. And his eyes begin to spin, kind of like almost gets like a psychedelic kind of thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the alarms go off, the tower searchlights come on, and guards are informed of Toad's escape. It's quite a bit of racket. Even the lights in the nearby cottages are lighting up, and policemen are out racing across the city on their bicycles, which I just thought was funny to see. That's probably historically accurate, but I don't know. It was just strange to see.
Yeah.
And they're on horses, wagons. They're all searching for Toad. Toad, meanwhile, he's dinking and dunking through the alleyways as he's trying to avoid the search dogs until he's finally stopped by a policeman.
I thought those dogs were the dogs from Witch Mountain. There's a clip where dogs are coming around a corner. Are those the Witch Mountain dogs?
It's a similar animation.
Wrote it down.
Yeah.
It's very similar. That's so funny. It called all of us.
Mm-hmm. Well, Toad, still in his disguise, charms his way out until he drops his basically the ball and chain just drop out from under his nightgown, revealing that it actually is Toad. The policeman blows his whistle, and Toad tries to escape, but the momentum of that heavy ball and shackles carry him down the stairs and through a wall. Then the policemen continue to pursue him into a train yard, where a nearby locomotive is being tended to by its engineer. Then Toad steals the train right out from under him, And then the engineer yells out after me, "Arr!" And then all of a sudden, just as soon as it's gone, another one pulls right in.
Such a cartoon gag.
Yeah. And just another train's right there with the whistle, and they all jump on it and take off right after him. It was pretty entertaining. This was a pretty neat sequence here because Toad's like, he's having a blast.
Yeah, that's the thing. Nothing gets him down. He's not scared or anything. He's loving it.
He is loving it. And he's just blowing that train whistle over and over. He's heading down the track into the night. And, when you think about it, it's not actually a good idea because he's like calling attention to himself.
Yeah.
So you'd think you'd want to be quiet because he's trying to escape. But anyways, it's all fun and games until he looks back and he sees that he's being chased by another train. Like I said, that's full of policemen who all have their pistols out. And they're firing it in the air like a bunch of banditos.
Yeah, they're letting the lead fly, man.
Just totally unloading on him.
Yeah.
Let him have it.
Toad is shoveling coal as fast as he can into the boiler, and the policemen are just peppering the train with bullets. And, the animation of this scene is just really cool looking because, we see like the silhouette of the trains moving across the background at night, and we see the orange light of like the cinders from the train.
Yeah, I love those cinders. That was cool.
Yeah. And the bullet ricochets. It's just that's all the only color that you really see besides like the blue and purples of the night.
Yeah, that cool shot of just the locomotives. That felt very Mary Blair, like that.
Yeah.
Cinderella.
Well, you've got Mary Blair trees everywhere.
Yeah.
So it's definitely vibe. Yeah.
Well, Toad sees a bridge over a river coming up ahead, and he decides it's time to bail. And so he hurls himself off the bridge and into the water, laughing as the policemen carry on past him without noticing. And he's sure he's gotten away this time. But as he's laughing, like this fish kind of swims up to him and starts laughing along in this kind of tiny squeaky laugh.
Yeah.
But that's when Toad kind of starts realizing that his ball and chain are sinking into the riverbed, and he realizes I need to get to the surface. I don't know for you guys, but it was kind of uncomfortable watching him like struggle.
It was super uncomfortable. Yes,
Yeah.
it was not. That was not fun for me. I don't.
Yeah, the
I don't
whole
like
round-
Desperately
drownings.
reaching for that nearby tree limb. Yeah, it was just I did not like that.
Oh yeah, that little limb just kind of breaks off, and it's just this shot of the ball like going down in the mud and getting stuck in the mud, which is yeah.
Further down the riverbank, Molly and Rat are saying grace as they're about to eat their Christmas dinner. And they also wish blessings on their friend Toad, unaware of his attempted escape. But suddenly the front door swings open and the cold blows in a half-frozen Toad who managed to escape the river, thank goodness. But since Toad is still dressed in his disguise, Molly and Rat think it's just some poor old lady, and they quickly jump up to help her until Toad's ball and chain again dropped from underneath his gown.
Great disguise here.
I'm so troubled by the repeated motif of using the ball as like prosthetic booty.
Yeah.
Because he kind of uses it on the cop when they're in the town, like shaking his
does.
booty. But yeah,
He shakes his money. Yeah.
What's holding it up?
I don't know.
modesty.
Well, they're happy to see him, but Molly says, "Aren't you afraid of the police?" And Toad laughs at the thought, but quickly changes his tune when suddenly there's knocks on the door and the policeman shouting, "Open up!" And he begs his friends to hide him, but they say he still owes a debt to society. Molly opens the door, and it's actually McBadger, out of breath, and saying he just made an important discovery. Well, so I have a problem with this. You actually hear them saying, open up, it's police, open up. But yet they open the door, and it's McBadger. So why would McBadger be saying that?
Does he say he's the
on the door?
police, or is it just sound like it's?
You're saying open
I
up.
don't remember him saying the
Maybe
police.
you're right. Maybe it's one of those things I just kind of put in there with my brain.
You just assumed the police. Just like them.
Just like them. Everybody assumes
Just like
police.
them. Oh, man, that's good
so
storytelling.
effective. So effective.
As McBadger begins telling his news, we see Toad Hall, and he says it's full of weedles. Wait, let me start that again. McBadger wishes... Jeez, Andy. Sorry. As McBadger begins telling his news, we see Toad Hall, and he says it's full of weasels, which we see enjoying some beers, and McBadger reveals that Mr. Winky is their leader. Well, the shady Winky is holding the deed to Toad Hall. We cut back to Rat and Moley realizing that Toad was telling the truth. And he really did trade Toad Hall for the motor car, which you would think make you feel better, but it's still not a good decision.
But you think somebody would have checked when he was like, no, I traded the... It's like somebody would be like, well, let's go to Toad Hall and like see
that's
if
exactly what I'm putting.
true.
It seems like that would be pretty easy to prove.
Yeah.
If Winky has the deed and is there.
Yeah, and like a million weasels. A lot of suds in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In both segments.
Well, McBadger wished that the innocent Toad was there so that he could tell him, but not knowing that Toad was right above him, hanging off the top of the Christmas tree. Well, the delighted Toad, hearing the news, drops into McBadger's lap to his surprise, and Rat apologizes for doubting his innocence. Toad quickly forgives his friends, but McBadger reminds him that he's still guilty in the eyes of the law, and they come up with a plan to get that deed away from Winky. Well, in order to get into Toad Hall unseen, the four of them are going to sneak through the hidden entrance. And so they quietly approach the entrance via a rowboat on the water, and McBadger warns them of a guard keeping watch. Toad pulls out this was great. Toad pulls out a shotgun. He says he's just going to pop him off.
I laughed so hard at that. I'll pop him off.
And before he can straight up murder this weasel, Rat and Moley jump on him as his gun fires into the water, alerting the guard weasel, who lets out a "Who goes there?" But luckily they're not seen as they continue hiding in the shadows and make their way to the secret entrance. They leave their boat and tiptoe their way up through the secret door to find all the weasels are asleep after some heavy drinking, as Michael was saying. They also see Winky passed out, but still holding onto the deed, and they attempt to retrieve it. Well, meanwhile, while they're doing all this, the guard weasel, who almost got gacked just a minute ago, he's still searching for the source of that noise, and he's discovered their rowboat. But then we jump back inside to Toad Hall, and McBadger and Rat have climbed up to the balcony, and they're lowering Mole down from the balcony over the snoring Winky, like Mission Impossible style.
Yeah.
Exactly, yes.
It has a real Jabba's Palace vibe with everybody just lounging around asleep.
Yeah.
I'm loving the music cues of this part too. It's really good.
Yeah.
Music.
But they end up lowering him too far, and Moley lands right on Winky, who doesn't wake up but puts his arm around the squishy mole to kind of cuddle him. Moley tickles Winky's ear to kind of get him to move his arm, which he does. And Moley grabs the deed, and McBadger and Rat quickly pull him up. But just as he arrives at the top of the balcony, that guard weasel catches him, and he throws a knife and cuts the rope, sending Moley crashing down onto Winky, startling him awake. And Winky realizes the deed is gone and just slaps all the other weasels awake, and they all start chasing after Moley. Well, then what we get is a series of back and forth with the deed as the weasels get it, but then Rat and Moley steal it back, and it's just back and forth. And at one point, the weasels throw a very large number of daggers and knives at Moley, pinning him to a door, but he escapes and folds the deed into a paper airplane, throwing it to Toad, who mishandles it. And there's more running around chasing after the paper airplane. And then Toad he wants to kind of, I guess, cause more confusion, because then he just starts making and throwing lots of decoy paper airplanes. He's like, woo! Just folding and throwing them every which way. Also, you don't see just knives and daggers being thrown like that in cartoons anymore.
You don't.
Yeah,
I was just thinking that. I was like, things
true.
they would not do today. Sadly.
Yeah.
If only they'd throw more knives and daggers.
If only they knew the comedic potential of daggers.
I mean, you could see the influence of that on like Itchy and Scratchy, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, a lot of this felt like really modern with the like the back and forth. I mean, it was really fast paced, like shenanigans. It was really cartoony, so it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, it's a rather violent scene, as we've just said. as Toad and Rat and Moley and McBadger narrowly avoid death with all the sharp objects and clubs being hurled at them. At one point, they find themselves behind a revolving wall that does a 180-degree turn to get them to safety, but Moley's left behind. And after a few rotations, all four of them are finally together, and they escape as the weasels all run into the wall, and a large number of books just come crashing down on the weasels. Well, then Moley, Toad, Rat, and McBadger escape back to the rowboat, still at the secret entrance. And McBadger is glad they got out with their lives, but he says that he's sad that they didn't get the deed, but not so fast. Toad reveals that he did grab the deed, and they all cheer. Yay! The next day, the Daily Express newspaper headline reads, "Toad exonerated, good name cleared." And anytime there's a newspaper like this on screen, I like to look around and see what else is on there. And there was a good, like all the other little articles, there was the one headline that made me laugh, which said, "A meteorite falls near baby."
Yes, I saw that. I had that in my notes.
Rat, Moley, and McBadger have a toast to their friend Toad, who's a reformed man. But their glasses are suddenly shattered to the sound of a crash outside, and they rush to the window to see Toad and see his horse Cyril flying in an airplane, like circa early Wright brothers, I guess.
Oh yeah,
it's a Wright brother flyer. Yeah,
and he shouts out, "Come, I'll show you the world!" And as he flies to the sky and crashes into a statue, and he's laughing away, heading towards the sunset. And our narrator comes back and says that we should hold our judgment of Toad since don't we envy him a bit? And he says, "I know I sure do." And in closing, that is the master of Toad Hall, who will always be one of the most fabulous characters of all.
Hey guys, I found out something.
What's that?
Those dogs are the same dogs from Witch Mountain.
Wow.
No way.
Not only that, they are originally from Bambi, the hunter dogs.
Oh. All right.
So they recycled them. I'm starting to wonder about the recycling of shots now, because like I said, I caught some of the recycling.
Oh, man, there's a lot they did throughout. They used a lot of Snow White over and over again for different movies. But
that's like the reference or whatever. But I mean, this looks like straight up same animation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's too funny.
Hunter dogs, man, another Disney villain,
which explains why they were so like janky in Witch Mountain, and like kept cutting off at random points. Because it was not intended for that purpose.
So let's talk about the ride for a minute, because that ride was something else. I went back and watched like footage of the Disney World version that somebody had posted.
Something else, all right.
And I think I sent Jeff a still of the as the camera went by, you got to see the lady at Winky's bar, and I sent Jeff a still a screenshot of that, and I thought, what in the world? I guess I was too young to really.
Rolly Crump, man, the great Rolly Crump.
Getting free.
So, I think my memory of that ride is primarily the train coming at me.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah. I was terrified of that ride when I was a kid. Like, I didn't appreciate that ride till I was older, because I was so scared of it as a kid. I mean, there was a lot of stuff. Like, there's a scene where you're driving through Toad Hall and stuff's coming at you, and there's a suit of armor that like falls down like it's going to fall on you, and that kind of creeps me out.
That's right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
Then, of course, the whole sort of devils and Satan at the end.
That's so bizarre. And I'd forgotten that he dies in the ride.
Yeah.
And then goes to hell.
Oh, man. See, I don't remember. I mean, I remember riding it as a young kid. I remember being terrified. And I remember my father convincing me to get on the ride with him. And I think you ride in one of the motor cars, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was cool.
I mean, they look just like, that was amazed me. It's the one that he stole. Looks just like the ride vehicles. Right. And each one had the name of like McBadger or Ratty or Mole, or, it painted on the front in fancy script.
I guess I wasn't paying that close of attention, but I was surprised watching the video that each side was different. Like, different elements and different.
Well, that was the best part of it, was that whether you got on the right side or the left side, you'd get a whole different ride. And then they'd meet in the middle where you're kind of going around that roundabout in the middle of London.
Yeah.
And it would be like you were going to run into the people on the other track. But yeah, you'd get a whole different ride each, depending on which side you went on. So that was awesome.
Why did they close it?
It was just the height of poo mania, and they didn't think anybody cared about Mr. Toad. And it's like, people may not care about Mr. Toad, but they cared about that ride, you know? It was like the ride was more famous than the movie at that point, you know?
Definitely, yeah.
So it was the height of poo mania, and instead of building a new poo attraction, they just ripped it out and put poo in there. So it's a shame.
And then you can is it? I think I've seen the Toad statue at the Haunted Mansion at Disney World, at Magic Kingdom, in the graveyard.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Because the ride's buried there or something in it. That's sort of the gag, or
well, that's just like an Easter egg, like.
Right. Yeah. But there's also that Mr. Toad handing the deed over to the poo
to
Owl
hidden away in the ride. Yeah.
And they still have it in Disneyland, of course.
It's not the same, though.
It's not. It's not the same. That's for sure.
I was excited to ride it, though. The one time I've been out to Disneyland.
Yeah, I'm super glad it's there, no doubt. And it looks great. It's in like a little replica of Toad Hall, so it looks really good. But I think they've got a restaurant in Paris, maybe, that's in a replica of Toad Hall.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
He lives on.
And that was the fabulous Thaddeus Toad. But let's weigh our judgment carefully. We moles and rats and badgers, really now, don't we envy him a bit? I know I do. And so when we speak of fabulous characters, the most fabulous of all will always be, to me at least, the master of Toad Hall.
Oh, yes. Yeah, J. Thad was quite a lad. Speaking of fabulous characters, England has produced a bumper crop of them. But don't forget, over here in the colonies, we've managed to come up with a few of our own. How about Paul Bunyan, Pecos Bill, Johnny Appleseed, Black Bart, Davy Crockett, Daniel Boone, and of course, the one and only Ichabod Crane.
So we're back in the library with Mr. Crosby, and camera's pushing into some nicely bound books and focus on Ichabod Crane by Washington Irving, or Old Icky, as Bing calls him.
So good.
The book's open to a map of the Hudson River Valley when the city of Manhattan was just a market town. And then on into a town that, while it looks quaint and charming, has a side that is foreboding and dark, with tales of legends and dark histories, or I can't remember what they call it now, but
he says a phrase like "here in the colonies," doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Here in the colonies. And I was like, oh, that's a great term. I want to use that more.
Bing's got a lot of great terms.
He's got slang for days. Yeah.
I work with some Brits, and I'm going to start saying, well, here in the colonies, this and that.
So we're introduced to our protagonist, a long, lanky fellow, nose in a book, might mistake him for a scarecrow, as it is said. But in Sleepy Hollow, at ye old Schnooker and Schnapps shop with an E.
I like that. Yeah.
So amazing.
Sits the Sleepy Hollow boys, looking a little bored, until the silence is broken with a boisterous yee-haw, as Bram Bones comes galloping in.
I was going to say that Sleepy Hollow Boys is a great bluegrass band name.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, it really is.
And man, the Mary Blair is coming hard in this one.
Yeah,
that
really.
first map that's kind of showing Terrytown and Sleepy Hollow. So beautiful, and all the background and design. Super Mary Blair with Johnny Appleseed.
Seems Bram and his has a taste for pranks and mischief, but it's all in good nature. Although he pours around drinks, and mischief and drinks don't typically go together throughout the course of human history, in my opinion. Bram throws back some suds, and our first song starts as Ichabod strolls into town. Much to the shock of the town, he's kind of odd, but he's nice just the same. is what you can take from this song as it is sung. Ichabod begins his work at the schoolhouse by taking inventory of who can cook and who can't, by quietly and covertly taking peeks into the lunch baskets of his pupils, going as far as to avoid punishing malfeasance if the guilty had plenty of good food, as an indication that he may be invited over for dinner. If he gets on bad terms with the student, he might not.
You know, when I was a kid, I always thought Ichabod looked like Jeff Goldblum. I still kind of think it now. I'm like, I can see Jeff Goldblum
Like a
being
caricature.
Yeah.
Jeff
Yeah.
Goldblum. Yeah.
On top of being a man of odd stature, he was quite a crooner, sitting at the piano with a nice baritone voice as his ladies are swooning at his deep singing. And Jeff, can you give us an example of what it's like?
Oh, I don't know.
Boom, 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 boom.
Yeah.
I'm a tenor, so I'm on the bass. So.
What is weird
Ichabod.
is like they kind of split the difference between like Ichabod being weird and gawky, and yet he's somehow like a ladies' man.
It's really odd.
It's so weird.
His confidence he has. The ladies
Yeah.
like the confidence, I think.
Guess so.
And the intelligence. Maybe that's it. Outside, Bram, feeling a bit jealous of Mr. Crane's ability to sing, interrupts his singing with a loud dog howl. Then one day, Katrina Van Tessel comes riding into town, turning the eye of every able-bodied man of Sleepy Hollow.
No kidding.
We break into a nice song as Katrina prances around town, taking advantage of the obvious attention she receives from the male population,
Hey,
including our
you guys were talking about
protagonist.
reused animation. My wife pointed that out. She said that there was a lot of Katrina that looked like Cinderella. Is there?
I don't think it's
I don't know if they
reused. I
reused
think it's
any.
just the time it was made and the
Yeah.
people who were designing it, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, similar vibe though. Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely the vibe, yeah. The next scene is one that was burned into my memory, something I've always dreamed of doing. We see a book opened with gloves holding the book and Ichabod's trusty switch / pointer in the right hand, and Ichabod slumped behind his desk daydreaming of Katrina as his class
Something
runs
you've
amok.
always dreamed about doing, huh?
Well, maybe not know I was leading a class, but I always thought, man, it'd be great if I could just hold my book up and like take a nap and the teacher wouldn't notice. So I always thought that was a really, really smooth way of ducking responsibility there.
Yeah.
Just reading back here.
Little Ferris Bueller routine.
Ichabod's lust for Katrina seems to be more weighted towards her father's fortune, maybe more than
Weird,
her good
man.
looks and beauty, though.
Which is weird considering Katrina. That
She's-
like he's
yeah, she's
more about the
nothing-
money. I find it interesting that like both lead characters in this movie are kind of terrible people. Like
Yeah.
Toad and Ichabod are, because you're like, oh, this is gonna be, he's a gawky guy, he's kind of a nerd, but we're gonna root for him. And no, he's kind of awful.
He
Which
is
is chasing
absolutely
money
awful,
here.
I think.
Yeah.
Ichabod makes his move for Katrina only to overestimate Bram, but Katrina isn't feeling Bram's confidence and immediately takes to our man Ichabod. Bram and literally sweeps Katrina off her feet, leaving old Icky in the dust and the mud, but not one to back down. Old Crane races after her and humiliates Bram over and over again, eventually getting invited inside for what Bram assumes is some smoochy time.
You know, when I saw the animated Beauty and the Beast, it's all Gaston. I kept getting Bram and Gaston confused.
Oh,
Certainly,
absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. Another gag from the movie that remains in my memory is the half door joke. Bram waits for Crane to come out. He slams the top half of the door open, stunning Bram, who comes to and begins to pull the handle of the top half of the door as Crane opens the bottom half and waddles out underneath Bram. For some reason, I remember that as a kid, and I just thought that was hysterical.
Very distinctive look. He becomes like really square.
Yeah, that I don't know why. It's like he becomes Wreck-It Ralph. It's really weird.
Or like the Money for Nothing guys.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what that was such a weird gag, especially for the time. It's very weird.
Dutch Doors, though. So
yeah, Dutch Doors, Dutch Door comedy. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. There is like this is like just slapstick left and right. It's so dense with jokes.
Bram attempts to wall up Ichabod, but is interrupted by Katrina in her window. When he turns to finish the job, he punches the tree as old Icky is whistling down the road. He reaches down to pick up a horseshoe as Bram goes sailing over his head and into the well. Then it's hit on the head as Crane tosses the good luck horseshoe into the well. But Bram isn't going to let the battle determine the war that is raging on right now. He's going to find a way to win.
Who's that coming down the street?
Are they shovels or are they feet?
Lean and lanky.
Skin and bone, with clothes a scarecrow would hate to own. Yet he has a certain air.
Debonair and devil may care. It's the new schoolmaster. What's his name?
Ichabod, Ichabod Crane.
We cut to an invitation addressed to Ichabod Crane, Esquire, which was an invitation from Baron von Tassel, Esquire, to attend a frolic at his home tonight.
Frolic. I love that. I'm going to co-op that.
Yeah, it's a real thing. They used to have frolics. Yeah, go figure. Katrina is writing to Ichabod to please come at the bottom of this invitation to her father's Halloween frolic. Guys, you been into any good Halloween frolics lately? I took Robert to one once.
Oh, tell us about it.
Oh,
That's the one I dressed up like Bill Clinton for?
No, that was another good one. Just when you came up to Franklin Street, Chapel Hill.
Oh, right. Yeah, I was good. Right when you after you said I remember this. That was quite a frolic.
Yeah.
Is that?
They don't do it like that anymore, I don't think. But yeah, it's quite the time. Robert saw some stuff he never thought he'd see.
Whenever I went to Franklin Street, I saw things I thought I'd never see.
That's probably true.
Ichabod, of course, was beside himself and grooms himself in front of a mirror in the schoolhouse, wondering what his charm is that he has over women. I'm with you, Ichabod. What is it? What is the charm?
We're all wondering.
I'm so curious. Yes.
Yeah. He happily leaves the schoolhouse on a horse he's borrowed for the occasion that was still attached to the plow. Now, this horse has seen better days. So, We cut to a beautiful Dutch colonial house by moonlight, lit from within, using that multi-plane camera, Michael. You know, nothing like a good Dutch colonial with a multi-plane camera at night.
Absolutely. Got to get that moon in perspective.
That's right. Bing tells us that there was nowhere that matched the merrymaking of the Van Tassel's farm, and it sure looks like it. I'll tell you one thing Ichabod's got going with it for him. He's an excellent dancer and is excelling on the dance floor with Katrina while Brom pouts on the sidelines. Ichabod steals snacks while Brom pouts.
Yeah,
Man, he's a hungry man.
He's hungry. But again, you're like, oh, the gawky nerd comes to town and he's going to be such a nerd and like an outcast. But he's like good at everything. It's so weird.
He's adept.
Subversion.
And what's Katrina's game here?
I kept wondering that too.
Yeah, I kept wondering if she's using Ichabod or, I don't know.
Still playing both sides, seems like. Well, Brom makes eye contact with a maiden who is, let us say, slightly less desirable than Katrina, much more eager, and gets her to dance in a scheme to trade off with Ichabod, and she is very excited. This is very odd.
This was burned into my memory too.
Yeah, me too.
As a kid, this whole beat,
the animation is so ridiculous.
It's very that animation seems like 1970s, like the Bluth animation.
Yeah, the goofy stuff.
Yes,
there's like Yeah, that's what it felt like. Yeah.
It's odd. It goes on for so long.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of hijinks.
Anyway, Brom chases Ichabod around, trying to get him to dance with her instead of Katrina, and finally, he shoves her into a closet, the maiden, that is. Ichabod is dancing so well, but he keeps dancing over a trap door, which Brom tries to open to get him to fall in, only to have himself inadvertently fall into, which he came out with a bunch of sausages and the like, so more cartoon
That was pretty
gags
funny.
there.
Yeah.
Time goes by, and it came time for the people of the party to tell ghost stories. Well, Brom realizes that Ichabod is incredibly superstitious. And as Ichabod continues to stuff his face, which, guys, give it a rest, Brom begins to tell the story of the Headless Horseman. Ichabod is spooked. Katrina is tickled because she's playing both sides. And, we get quite the jazzy number here as Brom's telling the story. And Katrina thinks this is really, really funny. And I don't know why. Why is it so funny?
She's super into it, and I don't get it. But she's an enigma.
Yes. Mysteries were never meant to solve, Michael. Brom mentions that if you see the Headless Horseman, all you have to do is make it across the bridge and the horseman can't follow you.
So the ghoulish guy here really bothered me as a kid. The one of these.
Oh yeah, that dude.
Some don't even wear their skin on the line. When he's talking about the ghouls and
sharp as ever, Robert.
Those are something, Ichabod and the Thing, Mr. Thing. Anyway, oddly, Ichabod accidentally puts a lot of pepper on a hard-boiled egg. It's too hot for him. I don't get it at this point.
See, that scene was burned in my brain. I remember just the pouring. I think it's like paprika or something.
That's the point, I guess. Well, now we cut to later that night. Ichabod's on his way home, and Ichabod is whistling nervously on his horse. Clearly very nervous. Ichabod urges his horse on as the forest seems to close in on him, but the horse is undeterred and marches on at the same pace. Now we get a spooky ghost that yells, "No, it's just two fireflies in a hole in a tree." We have all manner of weird animal noises and shadows and shapes. Finally, Crane sees a graveyard and is urging his horse on. Hearing hoofs behind him, he realizes his horse is just sitting on a gravestone, continually urging him on. He realizes that the horse footfalls are only cattails falling on a log, and he thinks this is very amusing and kind of loses his mind a bit as the horse laughs in his sleep. So he's kind of losing touch here. He's led into fear. Only through fear leads to anger. No, he's just kind of going crazy. All seems like it is well, though, until both of them hear a maniacal laugh and see and hear the Headless Horseman glowing in a terrible purple light. Really abstract here. So
really.
Like John Hint
color
involved
styling, very nice.
Really cool. Just in advance. This is really great. And where does it come from? The rest of this stuff there's good stuff here and there. There was actually something really good right before this where he's on the way somewhere and he's imagining like the wheat turning into gold. That gets a little abstract and cool, but
that was all her stuff. The lettuce turned into money.
Very few indications that it's going to go this high, which it does anyway.
Mm-hmm.
The horseman takes on hot pursuit. The hooves of the horse are making sparks on the rocks, which look really cool. He takes aim with his sword, but Ichabod remains ahead and out of reach. All the time, the laughter. Many situations follow, but man, this animation is impressive.
Yeah, it's really good. And there's so much motion to it. There's so much, like the camera's moving, they're moving, and this was the same thing I noticed when they were having all the dancing and stuff in the barn or the Van Tassels, and there's just so much going on. They were just
much tension. I mean,
filling the scene with stuff.
You're right. There's the tension. Even all these years later, I can still feel the tension watching this.
It's
scene.
intense. Yeah.
Yeah.
it
Oh,
used to
absolutely.
be- scared the bejesus out of me as a kid.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Well, it would.
Especially like when he lands and doesn't see the guy. It looks down his neck.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I was just gonna say, Crane and his horse take off for a bridge, get turned around. At one point, they run into the horseman, and Crane looks down his neck. It's just, yeah.
Yeah, that was spooky. And gets that laugh.
I was just, yeah. I mean, as a kid, and now I'm just going, just get off the horse and make a run for it. This horse is holding you back. That's the
Right.
problem here.
Well, Crane eventually gets caught on the horseman's horse, but eventually makes it to the bridge and crosses, which makes the horseman stop in his tracks. But the horseman, of course, throws his pumpkin. The next day, Crane's hat was found with the pumpkin, but Crane was never heard of again. Surely enough, Brom gets married to Katrina. Crane evidently marries someone else somewhere else. We see him at a table looking at another turkey, but no one knows for sure. Interesting end to that tale, but we're back in our library. We're zooming out. Close the book. Bing says, "Hey, I gotta get out of here." And we show the stained glass window. The light shuts off within. And that is Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad.
Now, rumors persisted that Ichabod was still alive, married to a wealthy widow in a distant county. But of course, the good Dutch settlers refused to believe such nonsense, for they knew the schoolmaster had been spirited away by the Headless Horseman.
With a hip, hip, and a clippity-clop.
He's out looking for a head to swap, so don't try to figure out a plan. You can't reason with a headless man. I'm getting out of here.
Has anyone read the book?
Satchmo to do Mr. Toad.
Hey, that's an idea.
Have them play off of each other.
So I've got a theory. I think it feels like they want you to think that maybe if someone's playing a trick on Ichabod, that it's Brom, right?
Right.
But I think it's Katrina. I think that's the real twist. Is Katrina is the one who's. That's why she's laughing when
That's why
Brom's
she's
telling the
laughing.
story.
She
She's
thinks
enjoying this.
She's
And,
a witch.
Boom.
Oh.
You got it. That's my
I was going to ask, has anyone read the book?
I never
Yeah,
have.
I never have either.
Because I was wondering if leaving it sort of open-ended that Ichabod lived, if that was a Disney adding, or
It's probably just like, I would imagine it's like at the end of the book is no one ever heard from him again. I would imagine. And then the Disney added the little, I've heard he got married. I don't know, but yeah,
no one really knows.
Yeah.
and-
It just seems like a clunky thing of like the never heard from him again is a lot more elegant. But,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, that's a good take there, Andy. I like that.
Oh man, no, it's scary. Any final thoughts before we leave this behind? I wish they would have made a whole movie out of Wind in the Willows. I think they could have done it.
That's what I was thinking the whole time. I think it would. I think Sleepy Hollow's the perfect length
Yeah,
for what it
yeah.
is. I think Wind in the Willows could probably been made into a feature to give it a little more time to breathe and to get to know the characters a little better.
That's exactly why. Because the characters, I want to know them better, and they barely do anything about them. And I feel like they're in a rush to get as many gags in as they can. But yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
those characters are interesting. I want to know them more. So anyway,
Yeah, I totally agree. I was thinking that the whole time too. I think they should have gone for it and made it a feature.
So you don't think they could have filled out Sleepy Hollow anymore then?
it seemed good.
I think it seems good, and I don't think Ichabod's somebody you want to spend that much time hanging out with.
Yeah, it's true.
It's just
I
like a
agree.
fun
It's
little
pretty
yarn.
shallow.
Yeah.
But I'm really surprised they didn't make a ride out of the Sleepy Hollow.
I was
That
going to say
seems
the
like-
same thing. If
Well,
that
my
would have been
friend-
fantastic.
It would have
I mean,
been so
I-
good.
Because we've seen, I know that we've talked about seeing the Headless Horseman at Disney World and stuff, and how fantastic that looks. But they could have done a ride, even if put it in the American experience or whatever at Epcot. That just could have been a cool thing to have some sort of ride there. I think.
I think there were proposals a long, long, long time ago, maybe at the origins of Disney World, that it would be in the mix, or that there was a plan one time for Disneyland for like an area themed around like folk tales, like American folk tales. And one of them, I think they were going to do this. I totally agree. It would make an awesome ride. It would be really cool.
Yeah, it would be. There's a, anecdotally that there was a plan to do different Fantasyland rides at Walt Disney World, and that the Mr. Toad ride would be a Sleepy Hollow ride instead. But
yeah.
Yeah, it would have been cool to see. Doubt that's going to happen now, though.
No.
Okay, well, we are going to be heading back to our normally scheduled program here with our fourth animated feature film. We're going back to animation, aren't we, Robert?
That is correct. This is this upcoming animation or animated movie is long been in my top 3, maybe even number 1. I mean, at times, it's a movie that I love, and I feel like it gets lost in the shuffle of all the other greats. But it's an origin story before origin stories were hip, and we're going to go to the dark ages of England, where a mysterious sword has appeared in stone in London after the death of the king. And I know the usual suspects here are very familiar with this one, but Andy, do you have a history with the Sword in the Stone? Have you seen it?
I've never seen it all the way through. I think we own it. And it's one of those that there's parts it's one of those things I tend to catch, a few scenes here and there, but I'm always up for a King Arthur story. So
Yeah,
I have not seen it in a long, long time.
I started watching it with my son when we got Disney Plus, and it has shot way up. I mean, it's in my top 5 now as well, Robert. I love it.
Yeah, when I hadn't seen it probably since college, and then my kids started watching it, and then I watched it several times just on my own after that. And
I remember, and I'll probably say this again next week, forget and say it again, but at our grandmother's house, they had I guess from when our mom and her siblings were kids, a novelization of it, like a little hardbound novelization of it. I remember reading that so many times. I think I read that more than I saw the actual movie.
It's good.
I thought you were going to say that she had a sword and a stone in the garden.
She had a sword and a stone in the garden. Well, she could have had.
Hey, good. It's true. Well, we hope you liked our 3rd annual Halloween spooky special. This one was requested by superfan Ellen Just Ellen, I guess. So we do take these comments into consideration and love to hear from you. You know how to do it. info@midfieldfilm and @midfieldfilm on all those social platforms the kids love. Something's got to be done about Todd. This time he's gone too far.
But he promised us.
Promises? What good are promises when wild manias take him? Now, Robert, you're his closest friend, are you not?
Yes, very, very dear friend.
Then you must find Todd and stop him. Michael?
Sorry, I didn't know there was a... Hold on. What's he doing?
He's got a new mania. He's rampaging about the county, not doing graphic design. He's got a horse named Cyril.
A horse named Cyril, you say?
Yes, and when Todd's got the mania, it may cause him to lose Toad Hall.
That sounds oddly familiar.
Oh, lose Todd Hall.
This sounds oddly familiar.
Todd Hall, is it?
That's where Todd does all his graphic design work, branding, logos, t-shirts, websites, digital advertising, etc.
So what are you suggesting, Jeff?
We must get him to find a positive mania.
Yes, a positive mania.
There's only one thing to do.
Yes, go to bindandgraphics.com.
Or Upworks!
BYDANDgraphics.com to get Todd doing positive graphic design mania and doing what he does best.
Making you look good.
Precisely.
Well, with that being said, we'll see you in a few short days for The Sword in the Stove.
Upworks!
Proud are we of mighty Redfield, our mother dear. All your sons and daughters hail to thee, Redfield College of Technology. And while we hold your banner high, rock, rock, we shout your praises to the sky, rock, rock. For proud are we of mighty Redfield, loyal